But guys, today's video is going to be a little bit shorter than usual because there's not much to talk about in this one, but I want to talk about Perpetua and her story event and why that story is actually not real and it's no longer canon anymore. And they kind of changed it up in DC as a whole. If you guys remember, like I think a few months ago, I made a video on the whole Perpetua story event and about her, coming into the story timeline with the whole Darkest Night Batman and him setting up this big old plan with her in Barbados and how she was basically trying to come back into existence to change all reality and all this stuff. And we had the World Forger, and this is where we had the story event where Superman pretty much punched and dropped the World Forger, and a lot of like the Superman fans and DC fans use this as power scaling for Superman's power, saying that he's so powerful that he can even take down a multiversal level being who creates the multiverse. And that this guy is even stronger than, Mixia Spitalik, meaning that, Superman's stronger than him. And he's always been holding back this and that. And that whole story event as a whole, I went throughout all of that and I made multiple videos on that. And those were pretty long videos too. These I had quite a bit of story to cover, but recently we found out that that story event is actually just not true. And the reason why it's not true is because it was made up by Darkseid. Apparently, Darkseid created this fake universe using this one machine. And as he created this fake universe, he created it by using like these mythologies all throughout the world and created this character Perpetua as the centerpiece of the story, and that's where like the whole story event came from. So he basically created a fake universe using this machine, and he created the gods and the mythology and changed the DC mythos by creating this godly beings and hierarchy using other gods that had been stated throughout mythology and stories, and he just used that to create Perpetua and the whole story event. So everything that happened in that story event that I covered was pretty much never really happened. It was all just made by him, and it was all fake. So Perpetua is not really a god. She's not the mother of the multiverse. There is no sixth. I mean, there's probably a sixth dimension, but it's not like what it was interpreted in that. There is no world forger, so that also means the whole story event with Superman one-shotting him and then that insane feat and stuff does not count either. And it does make sense in that regard because, like I said, it doesn't make sense for somebody like Superman, even though he's powerful, to be strong enough to knock somebody like him down. Even though, Bixie is Spitalik, is somebody who has been stated countless times to be holding back against Superman, and still Superman can't handle him. And he's not even using his multiversal level power affecting that. He's usually holding back, affecting somewhat of the universe as a whole, and Superman still can't handle that. Yet somehow he's able to punch this guy down. So it does make more sense now why that happened because this was just made up by Darkseid and it's a fake. I don't know if you guys like that idea of the story personally. I think it's kind of dumb, but then I also thought the whole story event had some stuff that didn't really make much sense, like the whole totality key and stuff. And a lot of stuff was just kind of really ridiculous. So I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, but I feel like this is honestly for the best, though I do think it's kind of dumb. And this is a very important lesson to a lot of comic book fans that they need to take into consideration. Before you make big statements and claims about a character's power or the story, the mythos, or the hierarchy or whatever of the story and the lore, just take some time to wait for new information. I always say this, wait for more information to come out because a lot of fans, especially comic book fans, do this all the time where they don't wait. Whatever story event comes out at that time, they just automatically say, well, this character is this powerful or this story is this and that. And I get it because, that's the information you're given with and you can't know what's going to happen in the future, but you can at least be patient and say, hey, look, this is what's shown in this story event, but who knows, maybe they might change at some point. But a lot of you guys are like, no, 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 this is 100% the case. And this is what happens because comic books, especially when it comes to DC, they tend to change things a lot around, They sometimes have a story where they're like, oh, this character is able to do this. And then later on, they're like, actually, none of that really happened. And one of the biggest cases was with Superman, where they had the death of Superman. And they said, Doomsday killed him. And they said the entire time, they're like, he died and how is he going to come back? And then later on, we found out that, oh, actually, Superman never really died. He just got beaten into a coma. And that was kind of a big change, but it was also not that big because at least that one did happen. It just wasn't as accurate as he died. It was just he got beaten into a coma. Whereas this one was, oh, this whole story event happened. All these characters came here. All this hierarchy, all this crazy stuff happened. But oh no, wait, none of that actually happened. It was all just made up by another person. It was like, what? So that's completely different, but that's just how comics are. They're very convoluted, they're very wacky, they have a lot of weird stuff that happens, a lot of contradictory things, a lot of things that don't make sense, and a lot of things that they usually backtrack on. So before you make any statements of this is 100%, just always put into like little like I don't know, quotes or put in a little bit like disclaimer like this is what it is the case right now. We don't know it later in the future. It might be different. And that's what I always say is like we just don't know. We just don't know. And a lot of people think I'm using that as an excuse or coping or trying to undermine characters. I'm only doing that because like I said, the landscape of comics compared to like manga, even manga, they do this all the time when they retcon shit. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Or we get information, we find out actually that was not the full information we needed there's more. This is what happens. Like, what the fuck? Just tell me the whole thing from the jump. Why are you lying to me? But that's just how writing works when it comes to these types of stories, especially when it comes to comics. How many times have we seen characters stated to be the most powerful being there, or this godly being, or that godly being, that later on being shown that he's actually weaker and there's somebody stronger? They did the same thing with the Beyonder, saying he destroyed the Celestials. He bodied the Celestials casually. Then later on, they're like, actually, no, the Celestials were way more powerful than him, infinitely more so. How are they way more powerful than him? Even though he beat them? Oh well, it was apparently that they put an illusion in his head that he beat them for whatever reason. They just did that, but they're actually way more powerful. So they do that all the time, and that's one of the hardest reasons. That's one of the reasons why I hate, and I mean, I really hate power scaling comic book characters and comic book stories. That's why I hate covering them too, because they change so much. They go back and forth with so many ideas. They give you new stuff, they get rid of it. Just like the Infinite Frontier, where they're like, every story event is canon now, even though there's a lot of, stuff that's confusing and a lot of stuff that's going to contradict each other, but whatever. They take it all into consideration. And my mind is like, yeah, that's what they say right now, but who's to say in the future they're not just going to change it? This whole Infinite Frontier, whatever, stories, thing that they did came from this story event, yet now we found out that it's not true. So I don't know. It's really confusing. All we know at this point is Darkseid admitted that none of that stuff happened. So all the events that happened in there that transpired technically didn't transpire. So we can't really use that in topics like debates like Superman's power when using that. So yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of back and forth stuff. There's a lot of stuff that is very confusing or very controversial. I can't blame everybody that buys into it, but I will say a lot of you guys get too cocky and get jump. You guys jump ahead too much. You don't take any time to wait and be patient to see what's going to happen later on. You just make these big bold statements and claims, and then stuff like this happens and it backfires on you and it looks bad. So yeah, that whole story event wasn't really the case. It didn't really work out like that. I will be reading that story with the Darkseid's explanation to see what happened there and find out what happened. But that is just what we know about this at this point. And we also know, like I said, that it's not what you guys thought it was. It was way different. So yeah, comic books are very confusing. And like I said, this is why I hate covering them, because there's so much that does not make sense that it gets to the point where it's a headache. And then there's so many different stories that you have to bounce off of and different characters, story events that they go into, and there's a lot of tie-ins. And it's just so much to the point. It's just like, why even bother? Why not just read this for enjoyment and just ignore whatever bullshit? But hey, people are going to do it no matter what. So you have to take into consideration all this stuff and also be prepared to change up your information. I have to myself, like with the whole Tesseract stuff like that. I talked about it where like the cosmic cube is just this, and then I was like, oh, actually, it's not. So there's times where I'm gonna get things wrong, and I'm just gonna be out upfront and admit it. I wonder if any of the Superman fans are gonna admit it, because I know a lot of you guys love to use that, especially in my comments. So I want to see now you guys comment that in this comment section. But a lot of them use that. I want to see if they have at least the decency or the morals to stand up and say, okay, I was wrong. We were wrong. This is not true. Or they're just going to pretend it didn't happen, sweep it under the rug. Because even when it comes to me, I hate to admit it because it's embarrassing to say, well, I was wrong and I completely gave you guys wrong information. But I'm going to be always honest with you guys and tell you, hey, look, I was wrong here. I thought it was one way. It was apparently another way. And I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. So yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for next time.